Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to another Pallavi Market Research video. Today, we're going to continue our discussion on the meta skill sets. If you haven't seen one of these videos before, a meta skill set is a skill that applies to any and all specializations. So it doesn't matter if you're a famous sculptor in Italy, if you are a massage therapist in France, or if you're a car salesman in America. Okay, this will apply to each and every one of you. In the previous videos, we discussed storytelling, self-learning, and time perception, all of which are really positive attributes to improving not just your skill in your given specialization, but your overall quality of life. They all help you, a meta skill, all of them help you in creating more leverage with your own inherent attributes, right? And also just with the life that you're living, right? So today, we're going to be discussing abundance. And you've probably heard people discuss abundance in the context of like having an abundance mindset. And that is sort of what I'm going to be describing today. Every thought that approaches your mind, right, has certain qualities to it, right? A lot of us in this modern America, we're taught these different new age spiritual techniques to improve, essentially to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts, right? We're taught negative thoughts are bad, positive thoughts are positive. But thoughts in and of themselves are actually kind of crappy. They're not that useful. So going to your thoughts for as a place of or a source of building up your self-esteem, your self-perception is sort of like dumpster diving behind a grocery store. And the negative thought is like the really moldy, gross, like pomegranates or whatever. And then the positive thoughts are like ripe bananas, right? It's great that you found the right bananas, but in the end of the day, you're still in a dumpster, right? So we want to provide another framework for how you should be perceiving your relationship with your mind in the in with the intention of creating an abundance mindset, okay? Because there are really only so many options, right? You can have an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. And in order to cultivate a mindset, you need to be able to identify which thought is which. Now, the problem is with a positive versus negative thought, a positive thought isn't inherently good or inherently bad. And just like how a negative thought is inherently good or inherently bad. If you go and you read all these like new age, self-help books, they're going to teach you all the same thing. They're going to teach you how to what I call farm positivity. They're going to show you that you should be pulling out the weeds essentially that are your negative thoughts and replacing them with positive ones and that your mind should be this like positive thought factory. But that couldn't be further from the truth. What is a much better framework is essentially this idea of faithfulness versus fearfulness. You need to have negative thoughts, okay? Or else you are going to become a sociopath who isn't going to be a positive member of your community, right? If you're not able to self reflect, reflect on how either people have harmed you, right? Or you have harmed others by accident or not, right? Then you aren't going to be able to be a you're not going to be able to be a human being. You're not going to be able to be a social being, which is what you are. You are, like we talked about in previous videos, a political person, right? That like in the context of Aristotle, right? You are a person that exists relative to others. You are not this individual lone wolf creature, right? And if you are, you're miserable. Okay? And like that's what again, that is why solitary confinement is so difficult for people because you're a social being, right? So we need to be able to cultivate our ability to reflect. And in order to reflect really, really well, we must have the ability to reflect and engage with negative thoughts. Our ability to face negative thoughts head on, the scariest, deepest, darkest thoughts that we have, is essentially what a mentally healthy person is. I define essentially a mentally healthy person as is essentially like you can think of it as a circle, right? Everyone has these negative thoughts, these negative self-perceptions, these negative things that happen to them that are stored in their brain, right? And it exists on this circle, right? The mentally healthy person identifies it, faces it, and then the loop is closed, right? A mentally unhealthy person kind of feels it, puts it off, doesn't engage with it, and then pretends it's something else, right? And then they maybe eventually close the loop and face it head on, right? The more mentally healthier you are, the faster you are able to close that loop. Okay. So that is why this framework of faithfulness versus fearfulness is so important. Every action you engage with, like what I'm doing here with my hand, this is an action of faith. This is a faith based action, right? If I was fearful that I couldn't open my hand like genuinely to my bones, I wouldn't be able to, right? You are a faith-based organism. The things that you do every day, the thoughts that you have are all the result of faith. Okay? And I actually don't mean it in like a spiritual sense in the context of this video at all. You have every thought is either faith-based or fear-based, right? And if you're able to identify what a fear-based thought is and versus a faith-based thought, because they're different from a positive versus negative. I hope you guys understand that how different that distinction really is between faith, fear, positive, negative. Okay? Because you can have faithful thoughts that are extremely negative about yourself and others, right? And you need to engage with those. And when you are a faith-based person, right? Once you become a faith-based individual, then nothing scares you, right? Because you've identified every source of fear, and you've identified the pattern of thinking that leads you into acting out emotionally, right? And if you are engaged in the markets, like we talk about on this channel all the time, you are constantly going to be faced with emotional decisions, right? And emotional decisions are okay, right? But guys, if you're making emotional decisions after a snowballed effect of fearful thoughts, right? Then you're going to make the wrong decisions. Okay. You need to seriously just think, and it's very difficult because a faith-based thought and a fear-based thought can look a lot alike. And I'll loop this back around to what we were discussing earlier, an abundance thought versus a scarcity thought, right? Abundance is faith, scarcity is fear, right? There's no if you because there is no scarcity, right? That is a perception of the mind, right? If you are selling cars, you're not, and you have like this competing sales guy on your same lot, right? There- And you are just like, oh, well, he's just going to keep getting them every time, right? That's a fear based thought. That's a scarcity based mentality. It's not serving you, right? Even if it's like actually technically true, it just doesn't serve you whatsoever, right? You can obviously come up with a rational, logical argument for why you should have a fear-based mentality, right? That's why you won't hear me advocating for like these basic rational thinking and things like that, because rationality is extreme and logic too is extremely vulnerable. I guess modern understanding of logic is extremely vulnerable to fearfulness, right? You can very clearly generate a rational, logical thought, right? That is fear-based. And that's why and especially if you're an intelligent person, right? That is almost everything that intelligent people do. When you meet the highest level, like COO types, right? Like chief operating officers in corporations and things like that, these people are essentially paid to be paranoid. Their job is to be anxious and to be constantly thinking the fear-based thought ahead of time, right? And that is a role to play. But we want you guys to all be in the optimal position, which is always in the faith-based position. I hope you guys are following me. But again, if we can cultivate and just learn to identify the difference between these things, right? Then we're only going to allow faith-based thoughts to accumulate, right? Because when you begin thinking, right, it does oftentimes have a snowball effect, right? That is why people suffer from anxiety and depression so much, right? They suffer from it because they can't control their thoughts and they can't, well, more importantly, they can't identify what types of thoughts they're having when. And therefore, they stick to that vibration of thought and it snowballs into something really big and scary that they then have to, go to war with, right? Because your being, your vibration as a human being is defined in a lot of ways by your thoughts, right? So if you are having 70, 80, 90% negative thoughts all the time, or more importantly, fear-based thoughts, right? And you are going people are gonna feel that off of you, right? And you aren't gonna attract the things that you want because people need energy, not energy centers, but people need like, um, they need stability, right? Most people aren't able to cultivate stability on their own. And so if you are a faithful person, if you are a positive person, if you are able to have that self-discipline, that self-control. Because in this modern world, it is obviously a game of you versus you, right? Like we all know that. And the only thing we have to control is our minds, and none of us can do it. And so this is kind of a long way to say that if you can cultivate an abundance mindset through the prism of faithfulness and fearfulness, right? And being able to create that discipline of understanding the difference with every single thought that you have, and you're able to, right? Not allow the fearful ones to grow, and you allow the faithful ones to grow, while also allowing the constructive negativity to come through and for you to face it as quickly as possible. That will lead you to achieving your dreams in every single like you will be massively successful if you can just cultivate that practice. This is essentially what people want to be describing when they are talking about mindfulness, right? But you don't need a full mind. In a lot of ways, you want to be mindless. Mindlessness is a much better practice because most thoughts aren't actually getting you where you want to go. Action is the rule. Action gets you closer to your goals, and you can only engage in action if you are in a position, in a vibration of faithfulness, right? It is very hard to be engaged in action if you are, especially, well, you can be engaged in action if you're full of fear, right? But not in anything positive, but only in a hyper negative direction for you and everyone else around you. So it is not only your responsibility to yourself, but it is your responsibility to the other people in your life to cultivate this understanding, this difference between the things I discussed in this video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful. We will pick this up tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. It's Monday, April 15th. See you guys.